Is the old castle-and-moat security model enough today? When the workforce is everywhere and attackers are already inside the network, it's not. In this video, I'll explain why traditional security is broken, what Zero Trust is, and how it aims to solve the problem. For decades, the aim was simple. How do we keep threats outside of the network? The corporate network was often seen as a castle, and the edge security in the form of firewalls created the moat. Two needs introduced some very unique challenges to this model. A distributed workforce, so we had employees working more and more remotely or on the go, and the need to access company resources when not at the company. So how did we solve for this? We introduced technologies like terminal services or remote desktop, remote application virtualization, as well as VPN gateways and VPN concentrators for your larger companies. In the case of terminal services and VPNs, the model was a user would authenticate, land onto the network, and from the vantage of the security team, you're trusted. And from this trusted place, whether it's the VPN or the remote service session that you've signed into, you could access all the trusted content within the network. Security teams wanted more control, and a lot of them intended to achieve that by implementing ACLs. So imagine, for example, you land onto a subnet dedicated for the VPN. In some solutions, you're able to implement controls where sessions land onto specific IPs. And as a result, you can then do things like create ACLs. So you have ACLs that can define if user that fits X profile lands on B subnet, they're going to be able to access C resources because of the ACL that controls the communications between those subnets. Some companies would take it one step further where they'd implement full-fledged firewalls or security devices that had awareness of traffic such that you can implement more fine-grained controls. Maybe you implement specific ports or specific directionality of traffic. All of these controls, though, were somewhat sophisticated. It wasn't the norm to be found across every organization, and I'd go as far as saying it often required sophisticated teams with time and capabilities, which really wasn't the norm. But that being said, life was good. This model worked until it didn't. The attack surface of remote connectivity grew into something significant over time, and the risk then became something of considerable note. Roughly half of all ransomware attacks that are seen today seems to originate from some type of remote connectivity tool, whether that's VPNs or remote desktops. And the outcome of that is roughly 4.8 million per breach. So it's not just that we see ransomwares happening, but ransomwares are oftentimes also correlated with theft of data. And these come at significant cost to companies. Now, the other thing that created a huge shift is, quite frankly, COVID-19. But even before COVID-19, we were seeing companies shift to the cloud, but COVID-19 certainly played a significant factor in the speed at which companies progressed into the cloud. The two big market shifts that we saw was SaaS applications became quite normal, quite regular, quite often accessible to the average consumer. So if you think of your SMB, for example, I've in previous lives set up companies where there's absolutely no equipment apart from an internet connection, a router, and some SaaS applications. And this isn't exactly not the norm. In again, companies I've worked at, we've set up a number of customers in that fashion where really what they needed to do business was an internet connection. But even more so, if you think of the larger enterprises, private clouds, hybrid clouds, those became quite common, and they're quite common today, to the point that you often see companies not just with one flavor of GCP, Azure, AWS, etc., but sometimes you have multiple flavors because of the need for resiliency. So these all introduce some unique challenges. And what we see here, for example, is you had desktops, laptops, mobile devices floating out on the internet with access to corporate resources that lived in SaaS applications, and these were completely unmetered. So devices could basically access unrestricted. They would authenticate, and away they go. And then in the case of cloud environments, oftentimes communication would land on a corporate firewall and then get pinned out to whatever private clouds existed, and it's typically through some type of private connectivity, whether those are express links or site-to-site VPN. But the point is that traffic had to hit corporate network and then get pinned out to the location that you were trying to get to. Now, this creates a fundamental challenge for security teams, as you'd expect. There's the absence of visibility from a single common control plane. You have connections happening across various locations, some controlled, some uncontrolled, and as a result, the environment of connectivity isn't always sanitized. And this is particularly why we see so many cybersecurity attacks kind of originate from remote models of connectivity, because they're uncontrolled. Users do all sorts of crazy things, as we all know, and only God knows sometimes where these applications come from that they're using and what they click on. So it does create significant concern for security teams when you consider the absence of visibility, the absence of control. So what do we do? Enter Zero Trust. So if we look at the CISA definition of Zero Trust provides a collection of concepts and ideas designed to minimize uncertainty in enforcing accurate, least privilege, per request access decisions in information systems and services in the face of a network viewed as compromised. Effectively, what that's saying, and this is my simplified version of it, is Zero Trust is a framework that guides organizations' strategic, operational, and technical behaviors. It operates on the principle that threats originate both internally and externally, requiring every transaction to be validated before trust is gained. And I should probably tweak that by saying before trust is maintained, because in most Zero Trust models, and we're going to spend time on this much later in the series, but in most Zero Trust models, the device posture is a significant source of control before determining whether that device can be trusted to even have connections originate from it. So if you think, for example, the device is just going to simply authenticate username, password, that is not the modern world. More often than not, we see Zero Trust platforms will ask for context. It will ask of the workstation to prove I'm up to date, for example, I have an antivirus, my antivirus is up to date. It may even require compliance with corporate guidelines. In the fact that my workstation fits a certain build, or my antivirus must be up to date to a certain version. These are real controls that security teams begin to have when they think of the Zero Trust model. So how does zero trust get expressed from an architectural perspective? Well, it creates a single control plane, or it exists rather as a single control plane. And the intention is that the zero trust platform effectively sees the flow and the behavior of all communication on the network, and it has context for that communication. And at all times, the zero trust platform is able to maintain a policy decision or position on what traffic is acceptable, what traffic is not acceptable, what are the conditions, etc. And then it applies that policy position against that traffic. So imagine, for example, you have a user who's out in, I don't know, Tahiti, Bora Bora, they're on vacation, they've taken their company laptop, they want to connect in for resources. The service, zero trust service or platform, will have a policy position that's enforceable at all times, regardless of where the user is, what the user is doing, how they're connected. Now, certainly it can vary. And some platforms and solutions do take different positions depending on where a user is located. For example, companies may opt to say, if a user is on a trusted network, let's say it's on the corporate network, we trust our corporate network, and therefore we don't want to apply all the policy behaviors or policy positions when we're on the corporate network. We want to apply a subset of them, or we may not want to apply any of them. That can be a decision that companies make. But it's not entirely the intention of zero trust. And we'll get into that in some future videos. So the zero trust model does exactly what its name intends. It does not implicitly trust the user beyond the first authentication. Certainly not like a VPN service. One of the things I often hear in my career is we think of zero trust services as VPN replacement technologies, but we never stop to explain, well, what do we mean by a VPN replacement technology? It's not a VPN service. It may provide connectivity when leveraging the underlay of SASE or SSE, but it's not quite a VPN. And we will discuss that a bit more on our next video. On the next video, we're taking a bit of a side quest. We're going to spend some time talking about SASE and SSE. And we'll talk about the relationship to zero trust and some of the differences between both of them. And then subsequently, we're going to come right back to the zero trust course that we're on effectively. And we'll spend some time talking about the 5 pillars of zero trust as per CISA. If you've enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe and follow for more. I've been Chris. Until next time.